It's as a globe which centers the Arctic, or a wine cellar vintaged by place, not age, when wretched winter, to eyes unaccustomed, might turn without its page. See the once white valley bevillaned by buds, its long glaciered river a-teeming with suds, and quiet betrayed by a thorn-native mantis, who springs to a petal and asks, "May I wear this?"
Hey everyone, welcome back to Solacene. This week we're talking about the care of garments, as well as the end of life for your clothes.
Pretty much everything that happens after you make the clothes, wear the clothes, buy it, and perhaps spill some ketchup on it, let's say that.
So tell me about the poem.
The poem I was really proud of this week because you gave me the break last week. I guess it was the 2 weeks of recuperation. Brought me back to my literary senses. So proud that I read it to you earlier in the week on a fit of inspiration. I was like, look how good this is. And you kind of blanked me. You didn't really give me the reception that I've come to expect, which is undying praise. But anyway, the poem is kind of about perception, which I think today's episode will be touching on quite a bit. And I guess a little bit trying to dismantle or re-examine the way that we look at clothes, because what I have written on my notes for like the title of this week's episode is End of Life. But end of life really is, not to get too kind of hippie with it, but who's to say?
It's true.
You know what I mean? Like if you zoom out, then winter isn't really the end of a year. We just kind of, it's semi-arbitrary that we start in January, or that the globes always look the way they do, or maps, let's say. When we consider materials, and it's why I like the term circularity, circular economy, which I think we'll be touching on later, I think it's always helpful to try and see things from fresh angles. That's kind of what the poem gets at.
I like that, and I think today our goal is to bring some of those angles to people's awareness when considering their own closet, their own spills, stains.
Because I guess the point is that winter to spring, like winter seems like such a dead, like end of the year, like, oh, that's the end. But then spring to a lot of people's eyes might include it as the most beautiful season.
Yeah.
But that happens naturally. We don't have to do anything for that. Whereas with materials, we kind of do need to do that ourselves, or it will take many, many years.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I watched a video this week with Wendy is the name of the YouTube channel, and she sews, upcycles, and she made herself the goal of thrifting some items and flipping them into designer pieces, basically looking at runway looks and recreating them using thrifted pieces. So she went to the thrift store and bought a black dress with stains all over it, but the designer look had these cutouts that were like lined with bias tape and made it to look like flowers. But it's like someone obviously looked at this dress and was like, it's literally covered in stains, like I have no use for it. But then she saw it and found a way to not just give it new life, but literally make it kind of like spring, something brand new and something wonderful.
So you're saying that's the wonderful, you might say. That's the Solacene recommends for this week?
Yeah, with Wendy.
I'm going to actually give the whole Solacene recommends, I'll hijack yours and just add on your entire YouTube subscription list. Because I feel like they're all in this space of upcycling, giving clothes new life. Pretty much everybody that you subscribe to has a video entitled that, probably, except for Solacene.
Yeah, until today.
Yeah. Stains are also a really funny topic because we're like 12 episodes into the fashion semester, and I think for the most part it's all been kind of abstract or theoretical, the discussions we've been having, conceptual, let's say, where stains are such an ugly side of things. Like it's such a real unfashionable thing that you will never hear people really talk about in terms of like sustainability or the fashion industry, but it's such a prominent, at least in my experience, such a prominent part of things.
Yeah.
And also it links these two topics that we are discussing today, which is the garment care and the end of life. Because when you, as you already mentioned, that anecdote, when you wander through thrift stores, what you find, like a big part of most of the reason that the clothes are there is because there's just a stain on them. And obviously people didn't know what to do. And so they're like, I'll just put it here. Hopefully somebody else will either not care about it or know what to do. I have an iconic stain story, which is the ketchup. Do you remember the ketchup that I had? If I say the words fish shirt,
Yes. Yeah, Aaron doesn't eat ketchup. Probably once a year he does. And on the day he ate ketchup a few years ago, he chose to wear a white shirt. Really cool. Like a shirt that I will forever covet.
Yeah, we called it the fish shirt.
Yeah, it had fish on it. Pretty sweet. But then you got ketchup on it.
But you came to the rescue because it was at your apartment and I was initially like, oh, there goes another shirt. Like in this most defeatist way. And you're like, we can save it. And you like instinctively ran and started, I don't know, putting together some witch's brew and somehow you salvaged it though. It took about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But I guess it's the immediate action for stains.
I think the immediate action. That reminds me, there's an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where the main character learns that seltzer, like sparkling water, will take out blood stains. So his wife is in like, something happens to her and she's bleeding and he's like, instead of comforting her and being like, oh my gosh, you're bleeding, he's like, soda water, and just like runs around, like runs, I think, all the way to the store and just leaves his wife there bleeding because he's so focused on getting the stain out instead of actually helping the person. That's not the Solacene recommends of abandoning your loved ones, but it's true. Immediate action is important.
Yeah.
And I was thinking with stains and with tears as well, if you act as soon as it happens, it can solve it from turning into a bigger problem, which I feel like often happens with stains and tears.
Yeah. Maybe we're sounding a little bit too kind of Martha Stewart about like how to deal with things immediately.
I have an actual recipe for later, so like it's going to be pretty Martha Stewart from my end.
I guess my Solacene points about stains were reiterating what you said last week about reviving the apron. I feel like that is key because a lot of stains are food stains or cooking stains or whatever, oil. Also reiterating my point from, I want to say, episode 2 of the semester of the almanac. Remember I said everyone can have a clothes almanac or a fashion almanac in the home that just tells you things. I feel like if you just had a stain catalog.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I have no idea what the difference is between oil and ketchup and blood, who knows what else, toothpaste. I don't know how to deal with these things. But maybe if I could reference a book and someone might say, but there's the internet, and I'd be like, what is this? That's not soul.
It's true. Also, if you look it up on the internet, you're probably just going to get the wrong information, I feel like. I feel like we've reached a point with the internet where something as simple as like, how do I get an oil stain out? You would just have like 15 different answers, none of which are probably actually right. Yeah. And then you have to spend an hour trying to decipher it, use your critical reading skills. And it's like, I just need, like, this should be an easy answer. But I feel like there's just so much. That's back to the internet semester, but...
Yeah. And then my other point about this was patching and even re-dyeing, like dyeing clothes again.
Yeah.
Or tie-dyeing or something like that. I feel like that's a Solacene way around it because sometimes, I would say most often, stains just, you don't even notice them initially.
Yeah,
like so often we'll just pluck clothes out the washing machine and be like, what?
Yeah.
Like that's always the response. Like, what?
I've bought things from the thrift store and I'm pretty thorough when I buy things to look them over and assess, does this have a hole that I can mend, like figure out if I want to buy it, sort of thing. But I've full on bought them, brought them home, and then realized there's like a hole or a stain on the cuff or somewhere like weird. But yeah, you don't even notice them, and sometimes I think because I've been noticing that I will have clothes with holes or stains that I don't even notice for weeks. Like, other people also probably aren't going to notice them. However, I saw this guy on the internet, and tell me how you feel about this. And he said it's obvious, making... He had a horrible name for it, but some kind of, like, you have a shirt with stain on it, instead of just, like, trying to get the stain out or throwing away the shirt, he says, embroider, look at this stain, with an arrow.
No.
And I'm like, this is just tacky.
Yeah, tacky. But that's what I was saying. I mean, you can... I don't mind the kind of cobbled together sustainability aesthetic, which is like deliberately not hiding, let's say, patches on the elbows or elbow patch. Like that's a thing. But that's kind of attention seeking. Yeah.
I think if you're going to mend something, try and make it look nicer.
What's your favorite stain?
I knew you were going to ask me this, but I can't think of my favorite stain.
Oh,
there's one stain that I had on a pair of pants that after like a year just came out.
Mine's bleach stains.
Oh, okay.
Because those look designy.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
that's true.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah, I've had things that it has such a pattern on it that it blends in.
It adds to it.
Yeah. Apparently the woman who kind of popularized the summer dress, she worked at an orange juice stand and noticed that her dresses were getting a bunch of orange juice on them and like staining. So she started designing them in these really ornate patterns to like blend in the orange juice stains, and I really liked that philosophy. And then she became a very famous designer from her orange juice stand.
I actually might change it from bleach stains to grass stains, which used to be the absolute bane of my parents' existence because I would just be constantly knee sliding on grass. I don't know why I was obsessed with that and rolling around. But they look kind of cool. Unfortunately, adults don't really roll with them.
It's
But
really
I guess in terms of like closing this discussion on stains, which has probably already stretched on too long, with scars, right, on human skin, I feel like those have reached a level where most people will say, wear them.
Yeah.
Those look interesting. You know, your scars tell your story, something like that. Harry Potter. Pirates, right? Like there's a general kind of that's neat.
Yeah.
Stains is a general kind of that's dirty. So do you think in the Solacene that will change, or do you think we'll just be better at dealing with stains, or a bit of both?
A bit of both, for sure. Because I think there's no point in like purposely staining your clothes.
You don't want to be walking around with the mustard.
Yeah, but I think obviously like it's not going to remain bright yellow. It's going to just kind of be like a slightly different version of the color the shirt is. I think just we'll roll with it a bit more, but also the treatment, because the treatment of a lot of stains is quite easy. It's just knowing
but
how
it
to
needs
do
to be quick.
Yeah.
Like it's not even enough. Like I think usually even if you say, well, wait till I get home, you're toast.
Yeah. You can get little pens. Stain pens. Yeah.
I think it was a few years ago that there was a hot wing of frozen chicken wing, or maybe like a restaurant that released a shirt that was pre-stained. Okay. It was like a white shirt with red all over it.
That sounds gross to me, to be
No,
honest.
but let me explain. The idea was so that if you stain it, or when you stain it, so this can just be a wing shirt. That's a really disgusting idea, right?
There's something about being
a grown man or woman.
Being slobbish is not, I think, a Solacene
Unless you have a bib.
philosophy.
Bibs are Solacene? When's the last time
Not
you wore
for
them?
adults.
You wore a
When
bib.
I was probably 2.
Right. But
Yeah.
you do that thing with the napkin sometimes.
No, I don't.
Oh.
I put it on my lap sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the classy way. But mine's the kind of tuck in. You have to
No.
say tuck in.
I just don't.
So going from stains to washing. Washing, what a fascinating thing that we do. And my first note is yowza, by hand, not easy.
It's true.
You always see them in cartoons and old TV shows, westerns, the woman in the river with the washboard.
Yeah.
The washboard, that's such a bizarre thing. Have you ever held one of those?
I have.
I've never
Very
held
bumpy.
one. The time that I tried to wash my clothes by hand was in the bathtub. There was no prompting. It's not like our washing machine broke. I just thought, I'm going to do this to try and be Solacene. It was an early experiment in Solacening. And how long did it take for a regular load of laundry? Enough time for me to watch Citizen Kane. That's what I was doing while
I see.
did the clothes.
I think if you got better at it, maybe your time would cut down a bit.
But what I'm saying is, I think it's silly to be doing this by choice in the Solacene. Also, when I looked up washboard on the internet, it says, Wikipedia said, it's better known now for its secondary use as a musical instrument. And I was like, is it? I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of the washboard?
No, not as an
Maybe
instrument.
afterwards we'll have to watch a little bit of a video.
I've heard of washboard abs.
Yeah.
Like that's the secondary use.
It's true. I think washing... So I think we're going to differ on this one. I think we will wash our clothes more by hand in the Solacene.
I think washing machines are kind of soul. I'm going to put it out there.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're kind of soul.
Laundromats have a lot of soul.
Laundromats do. But I think tumble dryers don't. Tumble dryers are soulless, I think. Because I mean, I guess this is kind of, maybe it's a little bit played out of me, but I just think we can wash them in the washing machine and dry them in the air.
Yeah, well, drying takes a part of about 6% of your energy usage every month.
It's a lot.
Which is like, a chunk.
For something that really is just speeding up what would already happen.
It's fast air.
Fast air, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And...
Wait, why do you think though washing by hand? We can differ.
Well, I just think it... Well, one thing is you can wash your clothes way less. so then it wouldn't take.
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
your
we
loads would
both
be
agree on
smaller,
that.
right?
I think we wash our clothes too often, and I don't even think it's a hygiene thing that in the Solacene we'll have lower standards.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it straight up doesn't need, like, you would not notice in most cases unless you're working out in something or you've worn it like for 13 hours. I think it's just like people wash it with every wear because it's the done thing.
Yeah, and it's also like it feels weird to like put a pair of jeans that have been worn back with the other clean jeans.
It doesn't to me. I like it. Jeans is, I mean, jeans, aren't they supposed to be like
once a year or something?
Once a year.
Yeah, because they're like kind of antimicrobial on their own. Same with merino wool. Jeans apparently you can also put in the freezer.
I guess a good point about washing the clothes by hand versus in the washing machine is that we want the clothes in the Solacene to be of a higher quality.
Yeah.
And so maybe we want to be a little bit less rough with them.
Exactly. And when you wash them by hand, they last longer.
Yeah.
Because in the washing machine, they're basically just like beat.
Yeah, it's a throwback to pre-washboard. They used to slap it against rocks, right?
Yeah.
And it said the reason the washboard was popularized is because it was less rough on them.
Yeah, I've washed clothes with rocks before. And
how? When are you doing all this
them.
stuff? When you were with the Amish? How do you know about all this?
I want to say I was camping, needed to wash our clothes.
So you did what?
Just like scrubbed them against a rock.
With no water or anything?
Yeah, like by a river. A little
By
bit
a
of
river.
soap, like a hand bar of soap, and then scrub on the rock.
Wouldn't the rock be dirty? I have to ask that.
No, not if it's in the river.
Oh, it's a river
River
rock.
rock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure
But then
it
I just
wasn't
got a
big-
hole in it.
Big sea snail?
Could have been.
So the rock was so rough that you put a hole in the clothes.
Yeah, but I was probably also too rough. We have to learn how to hand wash our clothes. And now it's time for my recipe. Apparently you can make a little spritz to like kill bacteria in between wears, and it's good for outerwear, sweaters, things that is like maybe you sweat in, but like you don't really want to wash it. So you can spritz it with a solution of 1.5 cups of water, half of a cup of some kind of like alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and then a little bit of essential oil if you want. And you just spritz, and it kills the bacteria.
Nice.
So like, maybe I'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, I also had the note about detergent. Because even though I think washing machines are sole, I think store-bought detergent is soulless.
Yeah, a lot of these machines are made so that they don't work with handmade detergent, I learned.
Oh, I can imagine.
Because I wanted to make my own detergent instead of buying it in the big tubs.
Yeah.
Or the $20 sheets you can buy. I was like, there must be a cheaper and more sustainable way to do this. But it's like, because they're HG, whatever that means, they don't...
Homegrown.
Yeah, they don't work with homemade detergent.
700 million plastic jugs of detergent sold annually in the USA.
Wow.
About 70% of which goes straight to landfills. And I could just tell that because they seem like every time you have one, you're like, what do I do with this?
So thick.
It's so thick, so heavy, wash it out and recycle it. I mean, that's what we do, but it's, most people aren't doing this. And
It's
even
true.
if you do, I'm sure it's not good. Like, it would be better just to not have it at all. Sorry, Tide.
Yeah.
The anti-Solacene company.
Yep. I learned about guppy bags. I think I've mentioned these things before.
The microplastics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of like, but then I didn't know like the brand that made them because there's only really one existing type of these things. But you can buy these things called guppy bags, as in save the guppy fish, that you put your synthetics in to wash to avoid the microplastics going into the waterways. And a few notes on the Solacene is any new clothes in your current life to be more Solacene should not be synthetic if possible. Not even if possible. They shouldn't be synthetic because you don't need them.
Yeah, hard to find these days, though.
Yeah. And in the Solacene, there just won't be synthetics because we don't want any more microplastics in our blood or the blood of life, the oceans. But you can get a guppy bag.
You can.
Yeah.
You should.
Because you shouldn't throw out all your synthetic
You should get one
clothes.
for your fleece. Patagonia fleece.
You're right.
It sheds so much.
Just keep it, like, even when I'm wearing it. Just get a giant guppy bag.
You mentioned before about how the internet, like, it can be unreliable to find things regarding stains.
Yeah.
And I was trying to research why, when you hang dry clothes, they are so crusty. And the best example, or the best answer that I could find, even though there were several, is that it's minerals from the water itself. So I think my hypothesis is that if you were using, say, distilled water, it wouldn't get like
crusty?
that. Yeah. But obviously in the tumble dryer, they don't get crusty. When you hang them outside, so there's breeze, they don't get crusty because the wind and the heat even when you iron them, it breaks it down.
I see.
It's only when you hang them still indoors that it's, you know, the crust I'm talking about. And it's not even like it's the worst thing ever, because you can wear it and then it's fixed. But it raises the question of ironing. Where do you stand on that in the Solacene?
Well, my first thought is just like, my goal is always to store clothes so they don't get wrinkled in the first place.
Yeah.
So like when you hang them to dry or put them in the drying machine, then just hang them up or fold them so they don't get wrinkly.
Yeah, I'm going to put my family on blast here, because I don't think they listen to the podcast anyway. You know what I'm going to say, though.
Yeah.
In that we had this absurd cycle my entire childhood. I don't know why both my parents are incredibly wedded to the idea that everything needs to be ironed all the time.
Yeah.
But it dragged the process of 4 kids' clothes all being washed and dried and returned to the bedrooms. It over doubled the lifespan.
Yeah.
So we just
Ironing's
had this infinite pile that was called the ironing pile. So the process was, we'd wash the clothes, fold them for the ironing pile, where they would inevitably, in the weeks there, get kind of wrinkly.
Yeah.
Iron them. And
Well,
it's
that's the thing with like most of the clothes we wear, especially for kids. They're all
soft,
wrinkly.
right? Like,
yeah.
I understand it if you're wearing crispy clothes, as we call them. But nowadays, sweatpants, t-shirts is the uniform. In the Solacene, it won't be, for sure. But I think ironing, like, it's weirdly fun.
Yeah.
What's with that?
I always used to be jealous because every morning, Sunday morning for church, my dad would get to iron his clothes. But like, because I was a kid and hung up a lot of my dresses, like, they didn't get wrinkly, and I'd sometimes ask if I could iron it still.
I was actually going to mention the idea of the Sunday best, because I was reading a bit about the Japanese kimonos and how they had this very specific way of storing them that I thought was really funny. Like, quite often they would buy a specific chest for the kimono. And Sunday best is a fun, like a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
And also it's the fact that ironing through history, it's kind of a status symbol of, we don't want to crease our clothes. Even today, I think, like with sneakers, there's a lot of people who it's like, oh, if you got a crease, you know, you don't want to see that.
Yeah.
But maybe there's something to be said for the fact that because our world today is so dominated by sloth, and you don't have to be the absolute 1% to spend all day sitting and not doing anything, having creases is kind of a cool status.
That's a good point. Creases are the new cool.
Creases are cool. That's creasy. That could be a Solacene cool, because eco never really caught on, right?
Creasy. Okay, we'll see. Okay. My final point on caring for your garments is considering the care when you buy them. This is kind of obvious. Like, a lot of people won't buy dry clean only clothes because it's like, I'm not gonna bring them to the dry cleaner.
Do you know what dry cleaning is, by the way?
Yeah.
Because I was looking for this week and it blew my mind.
It's a lot of chemicals.
Yeah, it's crazy. I thought it was like, I don't know why. I always thought it was a very zen practice, but it seems not very Solacene.
No, it's like super unsustainable.
Yeah.
It's bad for the environment. And a lot of clothes that say dry clean only, like, you can just hand wash them.
So it just means, dry clean only kind of means don't be dumb. Is that?
Kind of. It's like, actually pay attention to how you're taking care of this.
Don't slap them against rocks.
Yeah, and like there's some materials, like some forms of silk actually can't get wet, like with water. But even then, just look into it, because you don't need to bring it to the dry cleaners. And if you absolutely must, find a sustainable one.
Sustainable dry cleaners.
Yeah.
Fun fact about ironing.
Hit me.
I guess it's not that fun. But apparently up to 40,000 years ago, people were ironing.
Whoa.
They would use hot rocks to smooth out animal hides.
Oh, okay. So it's like, I feel like people weren't that concerned about like their loincloths being 40,000.
Speak for yourself.
That makes sense, especially with animal hides.
Okay, I have a quote to kind of hinge into the next part of the episode. It's by Summer Rain Oaks. Do you know who that is?
Summer Rain Oaks.
I'm just reading it out now for the first time, and it's a Solacene name, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
Yeah, Rain is spelled like R-A-Y-N-E.
No.
What's wrong with that? Anyway, so she's apparently known as the world's first eco-model.
Okay.
She's an entrepreneur and author of Style Naturally. And it is what it is, but I like this quote. It says, One day we'll wake up and green will not be the new black, it will be the new invisible, meaning no longer will sustainable be the exception or something that's considered au courant. Instead, it will be a matter of course, something that all designers incorporate into their design ethos. And I felt like that was kind of neat. It was a quote from a few years ago, but I think like these things happen faster than people say. You know, like people say, oh, someday it'll get like this. It's like, but if sustainability in fashion is already such a big thing now, the two randos in Montreal are talking about it on their podcast.
Yeah.
That it's not going to be like in the distant future that it's a normative thing. Like I think looking at 15 years, like 15, 20 years, because even if someone said to you, oh, I have a new sustainable streetwear brand, you know, it's all about zero waste and circularity, you wouldn't roll your eyes, but it's not exactly cutting edge ideas anymore, even though it's still a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I liked that green will be the new invisible.
Yeah, I like that.
It's just part of the ethos.
Yeah, I'm going to start using that saying of like, this will be the new invisible.
Yeah, you have to quote Summer. You have to cite her every time. And the garment of the week for today's episode, I don't have it on me because I'm not quite sure where it is, but I thought it would be a good lead-in to our discussion of end of life. In my family, we just call it the sock shirt. Do you know about the sock shirt?
Sock shirt?
Yes. Maybe I was too embarrassed to tell you about this. So this was a shirt that I made.
Oh.
Out of socks. Right.
That's very Aaron.
Yeah. It was similar to washing the clothes by hand. It was one of my first forays into Solacene-ness.
Wait, so this was...
Yeah, it was probably 19, 20. I was at home.
So we were together.
Yeah, we were together.
Told me about the sock
I didn't tell you about it.
No.
So it really didn't turn out very well, and that's why I don't have it on me. It is a Franken shirt, a monstrosity, and it was worn one time by myself. I had a distinct difficulty putting it on, and even more of a difficulty getting out of it. And you might be saying, but Aaron, you can't sew. And that's correct, I can't. But in my family home, I had this free labor, which was my two younger sisters, one of whom was probably 13, 14 at the time. She can sew. Yeah. And I put her up to it. So shout out to her for making the sock shirt. It was on a mannequin, which we just had in our, you know, my house is like, you never know.
It's kind of like one of those.
It's a house of horrors, really. You never know what you're going to find.
We have the ironing pile, the mannequin, the child labor.
Yeah, the child labor. But the sock shirt, so it was made with all my old socks. Okay. So I was like, I'm not going to use these anymore because a lot of them were football socks, so they're obviously really long. And it's like, I'm not going to play this anymore. So I'm just going to slice them all into squares and basically try to
it's not horrible.
Arrange something like my heart was in the right place.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you'd seen the shirt, you'd disagree. You'd say this is a creature of
it's
Satan.
Not coming from the heart. It's coming from the depths of somewhere bad.
Yeah, it looks like some kind of gothic horror spawned from the collective imagination of upcyclers. But I thought that was kind of a good lead in because it's about, you know, it's in the same genre maybe as the Kool-Aid bag. Yeah. And we're not really a big fan of the Kool-Aid bag either. No. Which for people who don't know is like a literal purse made out of Kool-Aid bags that we were always shown in elementary school by like touring, I don't know, recyclers. Like, this is so cool. Look at this, guys. Ooh, bracelet made out of like fruit roll-ups. And we'd be like...
Yes, for anyone listening, if there's any of you out there, tell us if you had the touring recyclers, if you had any relationship with the Kool-Aid bag. Because I'd love to know if it was just a rural Nova Scotian thing or if it actually transcends.
Yeah, I think it was probably nationwide, as well as a little dancing compost bin. Yeah. But also, this reminds me, that's upcycling.
That explains so much.
Well, the way it imprinted us? Yeah, the propaganda works, some people might say. But again, to shout out one of your YouTubers, something that I really like the idea of actually, as I sometimes watch the videos over your shoulder or just passively absorb them, is the t-shirt thread. Yep. I'd never heard of that before, but I think that's such a neat thing because it's a way of actually doing it by hand without much skill really. Yeah. That doesn't look like a Kool-Aid bag. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can explain the t-shirt thread.
Well, it's yarn. Yeah, like yarn. As long as you know how to crochet or knit, you then take t-shirts and you cut them into strips. And you can kind of cut it in a way that it's like a continuous strip. Yeah. And then you have yarn and you tie the pieces together.
And you literally just make anything out of it and it doesn't look bizarre.
Yeah, it just looks pretty much like it was made out of a slightly chunky yarn, but like chunky. Still cool.
So I really like that idea because it's, usually when you hear about recycling materials, as in breaking them down, you're like, that sounds like a really high level and maybe water intensive or energy intensive process. But this just needs a pair of scissors and a DIY tutorial on YouTube. Yeah.
Did your grandmother or parents have rag rugs?
No.
So it was a thing probably in the 60s that people would make rugs out of rags, or just like old clothes, another word for rags. And I was always so fascinated by them because it's similar to the t-shirt thread, that it's like it doesn't look like old clothes because it's multicolored rugs, kind of woven, kind of just like twisted and braided.
Okay.
So just look up rag rugs. They look so cool.
Sounds so
such a cool texture. Maybe we'll try and make one just for fun.
Yeah, sounds greasy. I think part of the problem is it sounds a little bit like greasy.
Greasy, yeah.
Which
isn't cool.
Isn't eco or cool.
Yeah.
Thrifting though, because this is also where I was getting at with the sock shirt. Because I think sometimes we don't know what to do with these, especially kids' clothes that are maybe maybe it's a sports thing, or maybe it's like a sentimental thing. It's like, well, this is just going to sit in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're going to pass them down. But maybe it's also kind of gross, like socks.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really know. And so I was thinking about the concept of the grossness or the ick, I think the kids would say these days.
Yeah.
Which most young people don't feel regarding thrifting.
Yeah,
that's
it's remarkable.
That's gone away, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like my parents, for instance, or I think a lot of older generations have a distinct reservation about like, why would I want to wear somewhere else's clothes? They could have died in that or something. Like, you never know.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of gross. And I actually, like, to be honest, I'm not 100% cool with that idea of wearing thrifted clothes that much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do it and I'm fine with like, especially tops, but I do feel a bit of reservation regarding trousers.
Yeah, there
I know
a
you
few
wash
things
them and all
I've
that
seen
kind of stuff,
though at the thrift store and like that. Something's off about that.
Yeah, there was a raccoon wearing that.
Yeah. But usually you can kind of tell. And like I have a lot of faith in soap. Maybe that's old fashioned of me, but
but when you think about it, like, it's funny because so much of the Gen Z stuff is just going back to normal human nature. Like that distaste for hand-me-downs or thrifted clothes, like that is an artificial modern development.
Yeah.
So the Gen Z thing about being comfortable with it, like the stat I had about Gen Z and thrift, it's like thrift is a $28 billion industry. Mm-hmm. And one website that I saw said that it's set to eclipse fast fashion by 2029.
Really?
Yeah, which I don't 100% believe, but obviously it is catching up to some extent, and that's a good thing. And 40% of it is Gen Z. Like Depop, which is the website, the biggest thrift website, I think, 90% of its users are under the age of 26.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. Speaking of thrift and dead people, in Ghana, there's a market called Kantamanto Market.
Okay.
And it is Ghanaian for dead white man's clothes. And so this is a giant market that spans blocks, just a giant chunk of the city, where people import thrifted, like the clothes that the thrift stores don't sell. They send them there. And
a very strange thing.
Yeah. But it's just like where we don't think about this. You send it to the thrift store, and then it's like, but they can't sell everything.
So you're talking about this is the end of life.
The end of life. And this industry in Ghana, and it happens all over Africa and a lot of countries. We just kind of ship our stuff. And it's like, obviously, yeah, they can sell it and make money off of it, but there's no guarantee for quality. And so there's like importers, and they'll buy a container, like a shipping container of clothes, and pay up to $95,000 for the shipping container. And it's kind of like, why are they paying to import waste?
It all sounds very shady.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, in the market, whatever they can't sell is then sent to landfills. And in Ghana, right near this market, there is a newly developed landfill that should have lasted about 15 years. Like, that's kind of how landfills are measured, of like how long they're supposed to last for a city. But because of the new industry of this market, it only lasted about 4 years.
Wow.
So it just filled up really quickly. And because of these landfills needing to be developed, people are being displaced. A lot of the clothes are being burnt. I think there's like 1 or 2 days a week where they just kind of burn piles of clothes. So the air quality is super bad. And it's just kind of like, you have to think about the end of life when you're donating, getting rid of your clothes. And in the Solacene, there will be things just get to a point where you can't mend them, can't wear them.
Yeah.
Maybe you just don't want to. Like, not everyone's always going to be out here making sock shirts, even in the Solacene.
But that was kind of my point with the sock shirt versus t-shirts, right? Also, it's like, sock shirt, like, that's not a practical thing. Like, I understand it makes for good BuzzFeed articles about 15 things to do with your old pair of Levi's, and it's like a coaster that looks like a denim pocket, but it's like, nobody wants that, really.
Yeah.
Like, nobody really wants that.
It's true.
So it's about finding ways that aren't, like, the onus isn't really on the consumer in terms of they have to find creative ways to deal with their, like, falling apart pair of jeans. I think it sounds, again, kind of a passé thing, but it's so much more just about reduce. Just like, don't buy so many things. Yeah,
like reduce the demand and then they'll stop being made.
Like, if we just straight up cut out Shein, H&M, Walmart clothes, Amazon Basics or something, I'm willing to bet that would help it like 25% or something.
Yeah, I think. Another thing about textile waste and like end of life is in studios that are making clothes, about 15% of like the imported squares of fabric that you then cut out the patterns and make clothes out of just ends up on the floor. So it's like, it's literally just made and then thrown out. Like, there's nothing in between. So a very Solacene idea that I love is like zero waste pattern making. And this is similar to like what you were saying with thrifting. It's like, this is just kind of what we used to do.
Yeah.
And like, this is not that old of like designing patterns to either be cut out of a square or to be, it's kind of like when I was talking about the gusset the other day. It's like you tuck the fabric in so that it can then be used to change the size of the garment. But just like, be smart about how you use your fabric.
Is there any way of, you know how, like what you just said about 15% of it ending up on the floor, like you don't even use it. It reminds me of when you're cooking and you have all the vegetable scraps. I'll make a stock from this. Is there any kind of fabric stock that you can make?
Well, you can break it down. There's a lot of fabrics, especially natural ones.
You know how like with paper, you can use the scraps and make handmade paper?
Yeah, you can do that.
You can do that.
You break down the fibers back into just like the fibers and then you can re-spin it into wool. But another 2 ideas I had, Solacene ideas, one is knitting. So just like instead of making squares of fabric, just like
the t-shirt thread.
Yeah, weaving it into the shape that you need instead of cutting. And then also some kind of Solacene technology that can make the fabric just in the shapes already, then you can skip the cutting step.
Ooh.
Because as a seamstress, that's my least favorite step, the cutting. Because 1, it feels sad to waste anything. And 2, it's just time consuming. So some kind of Solacene futuristic technology that just like weaves the fabric in the shape that you need it.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
I had just a list of Solacene ideas, fun Solacene ideas / practices. And the first one is traveling dudes with big backpacks is what I've written. So this is like your cobblers, your hatters. And then I spent probably 90 seconds trying to think of a word for a cobbler, but for trousers and for t-shirts. And what I came up with was trousinos and shirtsmen.
So you don't mean tailors? You mean
before I realized that the word is tailors. And that I've shirtsmen and trousinos. But threaders.
Okay.
I don't know, threaders, maybe they collect scraps and do something with them. It sounds kind of like in the Maze Runner or that genre of young adult dystopian where they had to come up with a noun for everything. There'd be like a big dinner table and they're like, we call this a skate park. There's no reason why.
Call it the dirty spoon.
Yeah. But these guys should come back into vogue for sure. Yeah. And most of it is because we wear shoes now that we just expect they're sneakers. So it's like, well, they'll wear out in 2 years or 18 months and then there's no fixing them. And there isn't really, to be honest. So I think it's about changing what we wear, how many things we own, because like my basic point, it's again, I wanted to come up with more exciting kind of Solacene ways around this. Yeah. But it's just about having less. and having them be nicer things. So
Yeah.
I think it's just about making clothes feel less disposable.
Yeah, I think we can also make them modular
Yeah, modular clothes.
in the design, like the...
But like old school leather shoes, they are modular in their design.
Yeah, exactly.
But sneakers are not. You can't do anything with them.
You can't resole them or
Exactly.
get new uppers or whatever.
Another one ahead is family crests or place crests.
Okay.
Because I feel like this is a fun way of making anything look creasy, look cool, look eco. Because it's kind of like a positive or localized version of branding.
Yeah.
You know, people would say like, oh, there could be a Nike swoosh on a paper bag and people would buy it. And there is, and people do. But if it was like just your family crest, then you sew one of those on over a tiny stain or something like that, then all of a sudden you're just repping your heritage.
Yeah, I think it's like guerrilla gardening. You know, we talked about that, just like planting flowers and seeds, kind of like roguely. I like guerrilla embroidery, just like kind of little flowers.
Little
it's like
squiggles.
It's never gonna look that bad to have a little flower on your pants, or a little. Yeah, you can get creative with embroidery.
Yeah, my other idea was, you already mentioned it, but clothes that grow with you, especially for kids, because so many. The stat I had, almost 200 million items of kids' clothing are thrown out annually, just straight to the landfill. And this checks out because if you like, this is just the case with every family home that I've ever seen. It's like they're always just bags of things because you have to buy them, but they're never going to fit for more than like a month. So I think, just somehow making them maybe with the gussets that I think you mentioned. Yeah. It's a bit harder with shoes, obviously, but
there's already shoes that, you can get for kids 0 to 3. And like they just kind of
stretch. It's fun.
Super cool.
Solacene technologies or something like that.
Yeah.
And another one is clothes that are, this sounds counterintuitive, but clothes that are made to break down fast. I'm not talking about this on a wide level, but I think this is a really fun idea. Nike did a shoe like a decade ago. I think that was called the Nike Mayfly. And the advertising on it was literally like, this will last 100 wears. And then it will fall apart.
Interesting.
And I like the idea about, like, maybe it just grows with the season. Like, maybe there'll be a plant that we can engineer in the Solacene that just grows socks.
Okay.
It's just like these little ferns or these little leaves that are in the shape of socks. They have some kind of elasticity to them.
Interesting.
You can just wear them and then they'll just rot. Like, maybe they're rotting. They're not rotting on your body.
Maybe they're starting the process. That's so gross.
No, but maybe
so
there's something like... Obviously, we usually talk about clothes that should be made to last. But also key is like ones that will break down. So maybe not everyone's going to be affording like leather and wool and really well-made cotton all the time. So you just have your plant socks. That sounds really kind of classist, I think. But I would wear it anyway. Also, a small thing, I think companies should chill with the branded uniforms. Obviously, it's not a major part of clothes waste, but very often you'll be walking through a thrift store and you find... I don't know what kind of store would have it, like Foot Locker shirt. And it's like, no one's going to wear this because it says Foot Locker in massive letters. And
no, that's honestly a good point. I'm sure it contributes a bit to waste.
Yeah, a bit.
Like uniforms that are, branded. Because I like scrubs. I've always liked scrubs as a thing. It's just like a thing that only doctors and nurses wear.
Yeah.
But it's also not branded. Yeah, like the rock climbing gym, everyone has the brand on their Patagonia fleece.
Right.
And it's like, then if they quit, they're not going to keep wearing
thrown
it.
out. That's
they're
my
going to
point.
donate it. No one's going to buy it. Yeah.
And then my final idea was some kind of app where you can scan the garments and it will tell you the composition of it. Like in Plankton's lab where you walk through and it's like, Plankton.
50% evil.
Yeah, it's like, no, what does it say for Plankton?
something.
It's like, I think it's like 99% evil, 1% hot air or something like that. But anyway, some kind of... But we don't have this. It's 2023. We should have some Jetsons tech in the iPhone that you can scan the clothes and it's like, tells you the percentage of the things and also maybe it tells you for stains. Like, because of this, here's what you should do for the stains. Yeah. And also, like, this sounds like some AI thing. Like,
put AI to good use for once.
Yeah, for good use. And also it will tell you what will happen. Like, what are the kind of options for what you can do with it once you're finished with the shirt, kind of.
I've bought coffee beans that you can scan the bag and it tells you where they came from.
Yeah, something like that.
But that's kind of simple, but it's like,
It's very basic. But yeah, I think that's everything for today's episode. We talked about how to take care of the clothes in the Solacene, and also we kind of pontificated about end of life in the Solacene, even if that language is maybe reinforcing a certain uncircularity, which is not the healthiest. What's your favorite thing that you've ever thrifted? Let's end on that.
Oh, Aaron.
Item of clothing.
It's like choosing my favorite child. I really like the 2-piece suit that I recently got. It's wool, silk lined, made in Canada, very, very posh. And I got it for like $30. It's vintage. I wore it a couple weeks ago, so if you want to see it, you can go back. It's all when I'm wearing all one color.
It was on the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on YouTube. If you're just listening, Solacene Podcast on YouTube.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone who already subscribed. We love you.
I wouldn't go that far, but have a nice day.